Welcome.
You are watching Line Screw 1. Well, hello tubers, hope you're doing well wherever you are. I figured today was an excellent day to talk about the Emergencies Act of Canada. That's a federal act of Parliament here in Canada, and it looks like the Prime Minister, our crazy Trudeau, is about to enact the Emergencies Act. And since a lot of you guys never had an education in this kind of field, this was something that we really covered a lot back in my college and university days. And in fact, I remember when this act was actually made into law, because prior to this, we had what was called the War Measures Act, which was used during World War I, World War II, and we had the FLQ crisis, which I'm not going to get into. But essentially, there was some concerns that the War Measures Act wouldn't withstand a Charter of Rights challenge, because it was an old piece of legislation that might not stand up. So this Emergencies Act was actually made into law in July of 1988 under, ironically, a conservative government of Brian Mulroney. So let's get into this and what it does, what it can't do. I'll give you a little bit of an insight of what it actually is purported to do and the consequences. Now, Canadian laws are available for anybody to look up, so you can actually pull this up if you wish and read along if you're so inclined. But first of all, let's get into actually what the Emergency Act says. The difference between the Emergencies Act and the War Measures Act was the War Measures Act was written before we actually had a Charter of Rights. So this Emergencies Act is subject to our Charter rights, which means apparently these laws are contingent and regulated by our rights. But here's the big kicker. Rights can be suspended subject to what is reasonable. So you actually can limit rights, but essentially they can suspend rights on wherever the act is applied. If it's only applied to a specific area, obviously the areas not affected will not be applicable to the Emergencies Act. But it's an interesting piece of legislation that's never actually been used since it's been enacted in the 80s. But it does give the federal government a bunch of powers to force people to do things and even pay them to do things. Now, one of the preconditions of ordering the Emergencies Act to take effect is that there must be a consultation with the provinces that are involved, which is actually happening as we speak. Now, what the Act can actually do is under Section 19. They can regulate or prohibit public assembly. They can regulate and prohibit travel to, from, or within specific areas. And they can use specific property to control people. And they can secure protected places, whatever places I guess they determine they want to protect. Assumption and control and restoration and maintenance of public utilities and services. Here's another interesting kicker, subsection D, the authorization or direction of persons or class of persons to render essential services. So I guess tow truck companies that don't want to tow people can be made to do things, and of course anybody can be made to do something against their will under this act. Of course, there are provisions in the Act that people be compensated and paid for their services. And interestingly enough, there's also some legislation embedded here to actually indemnify people from getting sued if they do something wrong. So it's very interesting. Now, the kicker of all of this is the actual penalties. Here in Canada, we don't have what's called misdemeanors and felonies. We call them summary and indictable offenses. Summary, of course, being the least serious of the two classifications. So on summary conviction, a fine not exceeding $500 or imprisonment not exceeding 6 months. And on the serious end, if they proceed by indictment, $5,000 or up to 5 years in jail. As far as I'm concerned, the only way to really fight this is to have the truckers get their attorneys in court the moment this is actually enacted. And if anything that is not quite reasonable, have a judge make an order to contradict the Emergencies Act to make sure that the absolute minimum of civil rights are removed from the people. And our judiciary, thankfully, is still independent in this country, so a judge's order does mean something. But it's a matter of asserting your rights. If you don't assert your rights, you can lose them, whether it's in the streets or in the courts. Now, the most interesting thing of all of this is the very end section where there's a secrecy clause. You can't make this stuff up, folks. I'm just scrolling to it right now. Yes, under Schedule subsection 62.3, there's the Oath of Secrecy. So the strange part is the Oath of Secrecy. So certain people involved in the actual application of the Emergencies Act have to take the Oath of Secrecy, which says, I swear that I will not under due authority disclose or make known to any persons any document or information acquired by me by reason of the duties performed by me on behalf or under the direction of the Parliamentary Review Committee established pursuant to the Emergencies Act, so help me God. So, some people involved in the dirty goods here will be forced to take the Oath of Secrecy. Yeah, can't make this stuff up. That's part of the ugly underbelly of government, but how many people even read their acts of their legislature or their parliament or their government that they're at? You know, most people don't read this stuff. I'm reading it for you because I think you have the right to know. Pull it up for yourself if you don't believe me. Anyway, just figured I would share that with you, and let's see what happens in the upcoming days. Have a great day, guys. Over and out.
I got you, I got you, I got you.